With PTC's Creo Illustrate, a technical illustrator has the ability to connect directly to Windchill Service Information Manager to create, edit, and modify CAD-driven illustrations. These illustrations have a link back to the CAD source data to allow for illustration updates in which we can represent the most accurate and up-to-date CAD geometry. In this case here, as an illustrator, I've opened up an existing illustration. Here you can see we have a couple illustrations that have already been created. They have been created in a 3D environment and can be published to 3D or even 2D. Let's go ahead and create a new illustration. Within Creo Illustrate, I can create as many different types of illustrations as I want in one single file, whether they will be published to 2D or interactive 3D. As an illustrator, I can select on geometry very quickly and easily and hide that geometry to pinpoint exactly the parts that I want to illustrate. In Creo Illustrate, we have a variety of ways in which we can modify the appearance of parts, whether making those parts phantom or transparent to be able to see through them, as well as selecting on components and modifying their position or placement using a transform tool. You can see just by selecting on parts and using the transform tool, we can easily drag and reposition components to create an overall explode state. Once we've created our explode state, we have the ability to create dynamic explode lines. Selecting on a part, using the explode line tool will create an explode line back to the original source location of the part. I have full control over these explode lines and an easy way to go in and edit and manipulate and change the overall path and the final placement or location of the explode line. Within Creo Illustrate, I also have the ability to interact on parts and modify the color or appearance of those components. Don't like the color that the engineer assigned during the design process? Want to represent the parts differently in the illustration? I can easily select on those components and change the overall color. In this case here, we want to add a detailed view, or what we call an inset, to our illustration. I have the ability to also insert library components. Creo Illustrate comes with an out-of-the-box library with standard arrows and other tools and objects to use and leverage within the illustration process. The library is very configurable. You can create your own tools and components to store off in the Creo Illustrate library and use at your disposal. In this case here, we've inserted an arrow and we're changing some properties about this arrow. I have the ability to modify the color of the library component, the scale factor, change the size of it, and so forth, as well as even the position of the arrow in the graphics area. To finalize our detailed view, we will go ahead and insert what we call an inset. With the inset tool, an illustrator can define a focal point and project that to a detailed view window. In this case here, I'm going to go ahead and modify the inset to ensure that everything fits properly within my detailed view, and indicate to the end user or consumer of the illustration the correct direction to install the spindle seat component. We also have the ability within Creo Illustrate to not only create and publish out 3D illustrations, but also publish 2D illustrations, whether those are in a standard raster or vectorized format. I can indicate or create a page size and position and place my 3D information on that appropriate page size before publishing. I also have the ability to insert callouts. Creo Illustrate has a standard callout tool that is very configurable, and you can set up your own callout styles. we will use a standard out-of-the-box callout style for item number. I have the ability to interact directly on the callouts, reposition, and change properties and information about those callouts. Every callout we create in Creo Illustrate is a hotspot by default. So if I select on the callout, it will actually select and highlight the parts and components for me. Once the illustration has been finalized, I want to go ahead now and save this off in Windchill Service Information Manager. Selecting the Save button allows me to do that and create a version and iteration controlled illustration. In this next example, we want to use Creo Illustrate to create a technical 3D animation. We will be creating what we call a sequenced animation. In Creo Illustrate, you can create a variety of different sequence steps. These steps can be published out to 2D and placed in documentation, and also published to 3D and played as animations. Let's go ahead and finish the last few steps of our sequenced animation. By selecting on our animation tab, we have the ability to add a new step. You can see that it adds a step in our step editor tree. As I select and interact on parts in the model as well as library components, I can toggle their visibility, apply effects, as well as change the color. In this case here, we're going to indicate how to remove the hardware and how to take the ski off of the spindle. Selecting on the hardware, I can choose to change the color, apply effects such as unscrew effects, and translate to create overall explode states. Once I've interacted on the actual bolt, let's go ahead and do the same thing for the washer. We can change the color of the washer and go ahead and translate the washer outward. As we're creating these animation steps, they're very easy to go in and modify and edit. Expanding out the animation tree down at the bottom shows all the tracks in the timeline, and I can click and drag and dynamically move and edit those tracks to modify the overall animation step. Let's go ahead and add one more step. So the last step in this process is we're going to actually remove the spindle, remove the ski from the assembly. We'll change maybe the color of the spindle and translate the spindle upward. Once I've finalized the animation, again, I can publish the animation out to 2D, I can publish it out to interactive 3D, and I can also leverage off of this 3D animation and use it in Vuforia Studio, our technology for creating rich, augmented reality experiences.